Hello, I am C.W. Mayberry of Torah, Observant, Apostolics in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, continuing our Through the Bible studies. This is lesson 14, beginning in Genesis 29. And it reads, "And then Jacob went on his journey and came into the land of the people of the east." This is Syria, the land that originally Abraham had come from. "And he looked, and behold, in the field, and lo, there were 3 flocks of sheep lying by it. For out of the well they watered the flocks, and a great stone that was upon the well's mouth. And thither were all the flocks gathered, and they rolled the stone from the well's mouth, and watered the sheep, and put the stone again upon the well's mouth in this place. And Jacob said unto them, My brethren, whence be ye? And they said, Of Haran are we. And he said unto them, Know ye Laban the son of Nahor? And they said, We know him. And then said he unto them, Is he well? And they said, He is well. And behold, Rachel his daughter cometh with the sheep. And he said, Lo, it is yet high day, neither is it time that the cattle should be gathered together. Water ye the sheep, and go and feed them." Noonday, the heat of the day, not the time really to be watering his sheep, and yet they're there. And they said, We cannot until the flocks be gathered together, until they roll the stone from the well's mouth. Then we water the sheep. And while he yet spake with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she kept them. This is the youngest daughter. She's got an older sister. She's evidently got brothers or men servants that are in the employ of her father, and she's the one out doing this work. Okay, that's some industrious woman. "And it came to pass, when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban his mother's brother, that Jacob went near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth, and watered the flock, and Laban his mother's the flock of Laban his mother's brother. And Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept." It's something supernatural going on there. Okay, that's not customary. If it were happening to happen in our day and time, there might be a problem, and among most people. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's brother, and that he was Rebekah's son. And she ran and told her father. And it came to pass, when Laban heard the tidings of Jacob his sister's son, that he ran to meet him, and embraced him, and kissed him, and brought him to his house. And he told Laban all these things. These people were familiar with Abraham. They were familiar with Isaac. They were familiar, dare I say, with the wealth and the prosperity of these people. That's really what they were interested in. All right. In the middle. Laban said unto him, Surely thou art my bone of my bone, and flesh of my flesh. And he abode with him the space of a month. And Laban said unto Jacob, Because thou art my brother, shouldest thou serve me for naught? Tell me, what shall thy wages be? And Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. That's what he came there for to begin with. That's what he was laboring for, and really nothing else. Leah was tender-eyed, but Rachel was beautiful and well-favored. And you can take what you mean out of that verse. There's definitely a contrast. One sister was physically more attractive by whatever standards they used than the other. Good enough. And Jacob loved Rachel and said, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel, thy younger daughter. He's been there a month, and he loves her. I guess that's possible if God's in it. We'll leave that alone. And Laban said, It is better that I give her to thee, than thou shouldest give her unto another man. Abide with me. And Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed unto him but a few days, for the love that he had for her. Now, this is Jacob, whose name means supplanter. This is a guy who does what it takes to get ahead. He certainly took advantage of his brother's situation, although Esau was not a godly man. And really, the lineage had to be passed on to someone who would have at least an inclination toward God. But still, even with all that said, this is a guy who's cunning, divisive, and in his uncle, he's about to meet his match because his uncle understands his motivations and uses it against him. Okay? And Jacob said unto Laban, Give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go into her. And Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a feast. This is a wedding ceremony. This is the same as the second coming. The term I'm looking for, the marriage supper of the Lamb. Okay, these marriage suppers go on for about a week. People would travel great distances. They would be there. They would be gathered together. The consummation and all that would take place in a separate bridal chamber, obviously, but the party would go on. All right, it was not a 7-year process; it's a 7-day process, basically, and that's what's being typified here. Verse 22 again, and Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a feast. And it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah his daughter and brought her. He took Leah his daughter and brought her to him, and he went in to her. And Laban gave unto his daughter Leah Zilpah, his maid, for an handmaid. And it came to pass in the morning, behold, it was Leah. And he said to Laban, What is this that thou hast done unto me? Did I not serve with thee for Rachel? Wherefore then hast thou beguiled me, tricked me, conned me? Well, now he's getting a little taste of his own medicine. But it's rather interesting that he was with this woman. He didn't notice a difference in the sound of her voice. He didn't notice a difference in her visage. This must have been some kind of party. But Laban knew what he was doing. He'd gotten 7 years of benefit out of this man, the blessing of God overflowing into his life, and now he's going to get another 7 years because the man's caught basically by the heart. He truly is in love with this woman by this time, and not ready to give up on that. All right. And embedded within this story, let's say it now, is the pattern of the second coming. It's the pattern of the release of Israel from Egypt. The steps that happen, the order they happen in, all fall in place again and again and again. And it's a representation. People don't typically teach that, but you can't deny the overlapping pattern that's present in all of this. And I say that to bring this out. You've got two women here, the one he really wants and the one he has to deal with first, okay, in order to get to the one he really wants. You're talking about two different people groups, and I mean no insult to anyone by this, but you're talking about the natural seed of Abraham and the spiritual seed of Abraham. You're talking about a Jewish bride and a Gentile bride. Okay, that's what's typified here in these two women, and we'll get into that later on. All right. 26, and Laban said, It must not so be in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. He couldn't have declared that to start with. Yeah. Fulfill her week and fulfill her week, and we will give thee this also for the service which thou shalt serve with me yet another 7 years. So he's now hooked this man for 14 years. And Jacob did so and fulfilled her week. It's a week of years. The Greeks would call it a heptad. Same period of time of the time of Jacob's trouble. Interesting correlation. The Great Tribulation, Daniel's 70th week. And Laban gave to Rachel his daughter Bilhah, his handmaid, to be her maid. And he went in also unto Rachel, and he loved also Rachel more than Leah. And he served with him yet 7 other years. And when the Lord saw that Leah was hated, he openeth her womb, but Rachel was barren. And people today have begun to preach and to teach and even practice polygyny, um, the marriage of multiple women to one man, and they use the Bible as a justification for doing that. Okay, and it certainly happened. It's happening right here in this story. But have a look. He loves the one more than the other, and there's this constant battle back and forth. It's in complete opposition to human nature. Okay, no woman wants to be number two. No man wants to be number two. Very good. And Leah conceived and bare a son, and she called his name Reuben. So she's not loved like she should be, like she wants to be. Not her fault, her father in this whole situation. But she has this right desire, and Jehovah God sees to it that she at least gets this. For she said, surely the Lord, Jehovah, anytime you see capital Lord, capital O, capital R, capital D, it's Jehovah, looked upon my affliction, now therefore my husband will love me. And she conceived again and bare a son. She called, because the Lord hath heard, she conceived again and bare a son, and she said, because the Lord hath heard that I was hated, and hath therefore given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon. And she conceived again and bare a son, and said, now this time will my husband be joined unto me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore was his name called Levi. And she conceived again and bare a son, and she said, now I will praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah, and left bearing. So at this point, the first 3, she's hoping that the birth of these children will bring the affection of her husband as she desired. When the 4th one comes, she names him Judas. Evidently, she had given up on her husband and began to put her attention where they really belong, and that is on Jehovah, on God Almighty, on the Creator, and named the child Praise. And of course, Judah is the son through which Messiah comes. It is the tribe that we now really refer to as the Jews. The Jews is a very misused and distorted term, as you'll see as we go on. There was something else here, though. That's what it is. The firstborn son in all these relationships is upon the death of the father, ideally, the way it's supposed to work, receives a 2/3 inheritance of all his father had, and receives the place of preeminence or leadership in the family. Okay, and all that came through Leah. All right, something to hold on and think about. Just checking the time. Let's try chapter 30 and see how far we can go with that. Chapter 30. And when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said unto Jacob, give me children, or else I die. Because in that place, in that time, everybody has a place. Everybody has a function. A man's supposed to be a man. A woman's supposed to be a woman. But most of the confusion we have in this world today is because men and women aren't fulfilling those roles. And it's caused this great confusion that we have in this society today. It's entirely turned upside down because we've all stepped outside of our roles of male, female, husband, wife. Therefore, this woman understood her role. In biblical times, in an agricultural society, women want to produce children because children become a strength unto her and her husband. They become a way to increase wealth and strength, and they become your retirement plan. You pass on all that you have done unto them, and they care for you, and then the cycle repeats itself on and on and on. Okay? And we are so far from that today, it's almost an insult to suggest that it's a blessing for women to have children at this point in time. The children are seen as a curse, something that weighs you down. That's not the way it was meant to be. That's not the way it's ever going to be. And any society that fights against that is going to wind up where we are here in the United States. We've cursed ourselves with this genderless melding of these roles. All right, enough on that. She said, "Give me children lest I die." And Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, the one he loves. And he said, "Am I in God's stead, who hath withheld from thee the fruit of the womb?" And she said, "Behold, my maid Bilhah, go in unto her, and she shall bear upon my knees, and I shall also have children by her." This is the same thing that Sarah said to Abraham, and that was a disaster. And Bilhah conceived and bare Jacob a son, and Rachel said, "Go, God hath judged me, and hath also heard my voice, and hath given me a son. Therefore called she him Dan." Now, you want to talk about two jealous women, sisters that are married to the same man? Now you're including these maids who are concubines in this, who are even less of stature in this, but are being used to produce these children, which was the custom, and this is where you get polygyny, or the idea of it from. But I mean, what's her attitude going to be in this society that she's kind of locked into? She's having these children. She's going to be there the rest of her life. She's going to be number 3 or number 4. It tends to cause problems down the road. And Bilhah, Rachel's maid, conceived and bare Jacob a second son. And Rachel said, "With great wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister." There it is. "And I have prevailed." She called his name Naphtali. Where her sisters had 4, you've had 2. And Leah, when she saw that she had left off bearing, took Zilpah, her maid, and gave her to Jacob to wife. And I'm going to tell you something. If you, as a man, are thinking this is a great arrangement, no. One woman's enough fire for any man. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a son. And Leah said, "A troop cometh." And she called his name Gad. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a second son. And Leah said, "Happy am I, for the daughter shall call me blessed." And she called his name Asher, because that's the attitude of women in these days, is that it was necessary and a blessing to be the vehicle through which life came into this world. And Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field, so some considerable time has passed now, and brought them unto his mother Leah. And then Rachel said to Leah, "Give me, I pray thee, of thy son's mandrakes." And she said unto her, Is it a small matter that thou hast taken my husband, and wouldst thou take away my son's mandrakes also? This is a considerable amount of time that's going on. This animosity has just boiled and boiled and boiled, okay? Yeah, which, again, you're talking about Israel and the Gentile nations that are being brought in, that would be brought in. That conflict goes on again and again until we see it resolved in Messiah. And that's the type for polygyny. Yeah. And Jacob came out of the field in the evening, and Leah went out to meet him, and said, "Thou must come in unto me, for surely I have hired thee with thy son's mandrakes." And he lay with her that night. 4 possible women. 3 you've got to compete with. And you may be the least attractive of the 3. And God hearkened to Leah, and she conceived and bare Jacob a 5th son. And Leah said, "God hath given me my hire, because I have given my maiden to my husband." She called his name Issachar. And Leah conceived again and bare Jacob a sixth son. And Leah said, God hath endued me with a good dowry. There you go. Because it's socially necessary to produce children in order to sustain life and to provide for yourself in old age. That is your inheritance. It is your retirement plan. All right. And God remembered Rachel, and God hearkened unto Rachel, and opened her womb, and she conceived and bare a son. And God said, God had taken away my reproach, because it was a reproach. And she called his name Joseph. This is the first natural born son of Jacob and Rachel. And said, the Lord shall add to me another son. And it came to pass, when Rachel had borne Joseph, that Jacob said unto Laban, send me away, that I may go unto my own place, and to my own country, and give me my wives and my children, from whom I have served thee. And let me go, for now knowest my service which I have done thee. And Laban said unto him, I pray thee, if I have found favor in thine eyes, tarry, for I have learned by experience that the Lord hath blessed thee have blessed me for thy sake. So that it's an overflow. He understands, I wasn't doing well when you got here. When you come, things begin to happen, and it's all because your God is blessing me because of your presence here. I understand that. He does not have the same God. He does not serve the same God. Okay, they are the same bloodline. They are certainly related, and sometimes that's just the way it is. You can't guarantee that all the members of the family are going to be godly people. Sometimes the hard fact to understand is it's just genetics. It's just how you got into this world. Those people may not have the heart that you have toward the Creator, Jehovah, Yeshua, Jehovah incarnate. They may not. And they may still be religious people. They still may, use religious phrases. They still may go to religious places and do religious things. But when the rubber hits the road, and the relationship requires sacrifice, they're not going there. All right. I'm trying to figure out where to end this today. Verse 28, and he said, appoint me thy wages, and I will give it. Look, stay here with me, and tell me what you want, and I'll pay you that. Okay, because he sees this income. He said 14 years plus of increase because of this man, and he understands where it came from. He would have been better off to let him leave, keep what he had, but by trying to drag this out in an ungodly fashion, he's now going to cost himself. And he said unto him, Thou knowest how I have served thee, and how thy cattle was with me, for it was little which thou hast before I came, and is now increased unto a multitude. And the Lord, Jehovah, capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, hath blessed thee since my coming, and now when shall I provide for my own house also? So he's using the name of God. Laban is using Adonai, or some other general term. Jacob's using a specific name. All right. And he said, What shall I give thee? And Jacob said, Thou shalt not give me anything. And if thou wilt do this thing for me, I will again feed and keep thy flock. I will pass through all thy flock today, removing from thence all the speckled and the spotted, and all the brown cattle among them, and the spotted and the speckled among the goats, and of such shall be mine hire. I don't understand much about sheep. I do understand if you're processing wool, and it's various and sundry colors, it's going to be more difficult to deal with, probably of a lesser price than something that is a solid singular color, because you can do more with it without having to process that color out of it or just live with it. All right. Okay. So shall my righteousness answer for me in time to come, when it shall come for my hire before thy face, and every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats, and the brown among the sheep, that shall be counted stolen with me. So he's separating. He's saying all these are going to be mine, and I'm only going to keep the ones that are like this. If ever I leave here and I've got any kind of sheep with me that aren't speckled, ring-streaked, spotted, irregular, then I'm a thief and I stole them. And it's going to be a witness. We'll know who's who and what's what. Okay? And that's a two-edged sword. Because if that's all there is, then it's all his. All right. And believe me, Laban is not going to make that deal unless he thinks he's going to benefit from it. So now the uncle who has been teaching him these lessons is going to take some lessons from the Almighty. And he removed that day the goats and that were ring-streaked and spotted, and all the goats that were speckled and spotted, and every one that had some white in it, and all the brown among the sheep, and gave them into the hand of his sons. So his sons are now grown men, capable of caring for these sheep themselves, at least 14 years old, the oldest one, probably a little older than that. And in this culture, I mean, 14, friend, you had a job. You had a full-time, serious job. And he set 3 days' journey betwixt himself and Jacob. And Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. So Jacob's seeing over Laban's flocks directly. His sons are seeing it 3 days away, taking care of the others. All right. And Jacob took him rods of green poplar and green poplar, and the hazel and chestnut tree, and peeled it says, but peeled white streaks in them, and made the white appear was in the rod. And they set the rods which they had peeled before the flocks in the gutters and the watering troughs when the flocks came to drink, and they should conceive when they came to drink. So these females are coming up to drink. These stakes are there. The significance of that, I'm still not sure. If you know, hit me up on Facebook. Let me know. All right. And the flocks conceived before the rods and brought forth cattle ring-streaked, speckled, and spotted. And there you go. And Jacob did separate the lambs and set the faces of the flocks toward this ring-streak, and all the brown in the flock of Laban. And he put his own flocks by themselves, and put them not in Laban's cattle. And it came to pass, whenever the stronger cattle did conceive, that Jacob laid the rods before the eyes of the cattle in the gutters, and that they might conceive among the rods. But when the cattle were feeble, he put them not in. So the feebler were Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. And the man increased exceedingly, and had much cattle, and maidservants, and men servants, and camels, and asses. That begins chapter 31. So he's putting these rods out here when these things breed. And for whatever reason, they take off breeding at that. I don't know anything about sheep. I don't know that that's normal or not. I do know that Laban's aren't reproducing, and his are. And it's going to cause an increase of strength, of wealth, and it's going to cause a great deal of adversity. This is really the problem that the Pharisees had with Yeshua. He was growing, his ministry was growing, even when they crucified him. Those that he left behind, his sons, as it were, the 12. There are two groups of 12, the 12 sons of Jacob, the 12 apostles of the Lamb, began to increase. And they say that 40 years after the ascension of Yeshua, death, burial, resurrection, ascension, that there were some 80,000 believers in Jerusalem. If you've ever seen aerial photos of the old city of Jerusalem, it's not a big place. 80,000 people in those days would have been a considerable number of people. It literally turned the religious system upside down. And then this spread out across the known world with the same power. They don't tell you that in history books because a great deal of effort went into hiding the truth of the way the true gospel of Yeshua, Jesus Christ, spread throughout the world. Okay, by the end of the 3rd century, there were tens of millions of believers. What happened to them is another story, and it's a story we need to know. But for now, we'll leave that off and begin with chapter 30 next time around. Great and mighty God, touch the hearts and the minds of this people. Touch everyone viewing this. Touch them, increase their knowledge, increase their understanding. Open a door in their minds. Let this thing take hold. Let it take hold of my heart. Let it intertwine with my own spiritual DNA and become part of what I am and lead me to truth. In the name of Yeshua Messiah, I hope to see you on the other side. I am C.W. Mayberry with Torah Observant Apostolics in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We'll see you out there.